Well, folks, welcome to the 700 Club. Wendy is with me today. Just come back from West Virginia, the mountains or someplace.
Absolutely. It's good to go home.
Good to
back
go
to
home.
Williamson, West Virginia.
Yeah.
Actually, Hillary Clinton went there right after I did.
Did she know how to pronounce Appalachia?
I don't know, but she met with the coal miners, which was pretty brave considering she had just told everybody she was going to shut them down.
She promised she would destroy coal. It didn't make her popular.
She's got a lot of nerve, I'm telling you.
Well, ladies and gentlemen, as I came in today, I told the guy at the door, I said, you got to get used to singing Hail to the Chief to President Trump, because, man, he just smoked them in Indiana. And Ted Cruz said, that's it, I've had it, I'm out. And Donald Trump now has a clear shot at the nomination of the Republican Party. And everybody said it can't be possible. It's not possible. We don't believe it. And everybody said, you know, it can't happen. And yet he's going to be the Republican nominee. And, well, watch what's going to happen. You know, when I had something happen to me personally. You know, I had a group that was managing some accounts for me, and they were working with Credit Suisse, and Credit Suisse wanted to dump that phase of their business, and so they said, well, we want to dump this, and so these very talented young men went to work with J.P. Morgan Chase, which is the biggest bank in the country and supposedly well run. Well, I said, all right, I'll stay with you, so would you mind transferring my personal account over? They said, sure, okay. They locked me up for almost 2 months. I didn't have any checks, didn't have any access. I couldn't get any answers.
Oh, my goodness.
It was unbelievable. And I finally talked to the guy. They finally got the account open. I think I'm going to get some checks in a few days. But wow. I said, what is going on? They said, it's the government. The government has fined that particular bank several $1 billion. They find it's been reckless the way the government has dealt with it. And they're putting sand in the gears of American industry. And banks are scared to loan. Banks are even scared to take accounts. It is unbelievable, the regulation that's coming out. And you've got it in airports where the delays over 3 hours. People are missing their flights because those characters at TSA are bumbling around and slowing down. And it's like the Obama administration had one goal, and that was to destroy American industry. And they've done it. And the middle class is suffering. They haven't had a raise, in a sense, in their economic well-being in years. And it is just awful. And if something isn't done, and we hope that a President Trump would be able to cut through that nonsense and do away with those regulations. But there's something about the bureaucratic mentality that thinks they know everything and control should be in Washington. You've got the problem with health care. Your health care costs are going to go up dramatically in another month or so. Dramatically. Before the election, they're going to go up dramatically. And Obamacare has been a disaster, and you go right down the line. When the government takes charge of something, they screw it up. And so I fear for our country unless somebody comes in, and I think that's what Trump was dealing into. There are people who are frustrated. I mean, if they would do it to me, they'll do it to a whole lot of others. Yeah. And people are just saying, we're fed up with this bureaucratic meddling in our lives. And you mentioned the coal industry. They said, we're going to destroy the coal industry. That's what they said.
They absolutely said it. And then they pretend like they didn't say it. And people in Appalachia aren't that stupid, Pat.
Well, thousands of people out of work and businesses going bankrupt. I think Peabody, one of the big coal companies, filed for bankruptcy. It's just incredible how they have destroyed or attempting to destroy this great industry and the great nation. And so when somebody comes along and says, I'm going to restore your greatness again, everybody says, okay, you're our guy, go for it.
Go for it.
Regardless of what he says or how many crazy things he said, they say, we want this to be our leader. That's how come he won.
That's right.
All right.
Trump will, of course, be going up against Hillary Clinton, even though the socialist candidate Bernie Sanders did win a surprising upset victory last night over Clinton in Indiana. Gary Lane has the story.
Tuesday night, a subdued Donald Trump claimed a victory in Indiana's Republican presidential primary.
It really looks like a massive victory and looks like we win all 57 delegates.
And with Trump now only about 200 delegates away from what he needs to secure the nomination, even GOP Chairman Reince Priebus tweeted Trump's the party's presumptive nominee. He said, quote, "We need to unite and focus on defeating Hillary Clinton." Ted Cruz needed a win in Indiana, his last stand to stop Trump. A disappointed Cruz announced he's suspending his campaign.
We gave it everything we've got, but the voters chose another path.
And now it's clear that path is a Washington outsider, with Republicans preferring a non-politician, a brash, outspoken billionaire businessman over the Tea Party candidate. In New York, Trump told his supporters America needs to win again because it's been losing all the time.
We lose with our military. We can't beat ISIS. We lose with trade. We lose with borders. We lose with everything. We're not going to lose. We're going to start winning again, and we're going to win big league. Believe me.
But the question now, can Trump win his race for the White House against Hillary Clinton? Secretary Clinton now has 92% of the delegates she needs to secure her party's nomination. But Democrat Socialist Senator Bernie Sanders, who upset Clinton to win the Indiana primary, said not so fast. And he said he has momentum.
I understand that Secretary Clinton thinks that this campaign is over. I've got some bad news for her.
But with many superdelegates already pledged to Mrs. Clinton, it seems mathematically impossible for Sanders to win his party's nomination. But he promises to stay in the race. And although their party conventions and official nominations are still more than 2 months away, Donald Trump and Hillary Clinton will now focus their campaign efforts against one another. Gary Lane, CBN News.
Thanks, Gary. Our CBN News political correspondent, David Brody, is with us. And David, you were with the Trumps. You've been on the campaign trail. Now he's turning his fire on Hillary. Tell me what it's going to be like.
It's going to be pretty intense, Pat. Boy, where do I even begin with Donald Trump? He has done the unthinkable. Literally, the GOP establishment needs smelling salts this morning to get themselves off the floor because we're in for a wild ride. Look, everybody thinks that Donald Trump will fight nasty with Hillary Clinton in a general election. And guess what, Pat? That's exactly right. I'm waiting for the news conference, and you know it's coming, Pat, where Paula Jones and Juanita Broderick and all of the women from Bill Clinton's past are standing around Donald Trump when Hillary Clinton tries to play the war on woman card against Trump. Trump's going to say, Hillary, I've got a few folks I'd like you to meet. And I think that's what we're in for, Pat, coming this fall.
Look, you were out talking to voters. I do hope that you were talking to voters. What did they say? These Trump voters are so passionate for their candidate.
They're passionate because he breaks through that political correctness that's out there. They can't stand it. And oh, by the way, newsflash to America, evangelicals are part of that frustrated class of voter out there. You know, I call them the sick and tired evangelical voters, Pat, who have, let's be honest here for a moment, propelled Donald Trump to victory. I know it's the secret or the dirty little secret no one wants to talk about, but these are not just the nominal Christians, the culturally conservative Christians in quotes that Donald Trump is attracting. He is attracting, look at Indiana on Tuesday night. He attracted 35% of the weekly church-going crowd. So these are not just folks that are showing up for Easter and Christmas in church. These are actually weekly evangelicals who are sick and tired of politics as usual. And quite frankly, Pat, this is an indictment of the Republican Party. The fact that Donald Trump could be the nominee of the Republican Party really says a lot about the Republican Party, how they have decided for years and years, decades, if you will, to say, forget about it. We're not really going to listen to the voters, or we're going to do our thing and basically drink the Potomac water. And indeed, evangelicals and others have said, you know what, we'll even go with Trump after all of this.
You know, we had John Boehner as Speaker, and we had Mitch McConnell as the Majority Leader in the Senate, and the Republicans had taken control of the House and the Senate. And yet, they didn't seem to be able to stand up to Obama. Was that on the hearts of voters when they went to the polls?
No, there's no doubt about it. It definitely was. It was enough of Mitch McConnell, enough of John Boehner. And, you know, quite frankly, John Boehner probably did Ted Cruz a favor to a degree the other day when he called Cruz Lucifer in the flesh, because, you know, Ted Cruz could look at that and say, hey, that's a ringing endorsement because the establishment can't stand me. And so, you know, Ted Cruz actually had the anti-establishment folks that were voting for him. The voters liked that. I think Ted Cruz's problem was the messenger. In other words, what he was in terms of how he was not able to relate to voters as well as Donald Trump. In other words, folks might have liked the message that Ted Cruz was saying because he is a rock-ribbed conservative. I'm not quite convinced, though, that they actually liked the messenger. And I think it all fell apart for Ted Cruz in Iowa. If you remember, he won Iowa. Evangelicals went, as Donald Trump would say, big league for Ted Cruz. And then the bottom fell out with evangelicals because 2 weeks later, it was Donald Trump doing well with evangelicals, not Ted Cruz, because what happened in Iowa? That was when Ted Cruz's campaign basically started the whole Ben Carson situation, saying that it looked like he was going to drop out or not campaign anymore. And then the Iowa flyer was controversial, the mailer that folks got. And then Marco Rubio, Ben Carson, and yes, Donald Trump all started to pile on Ted Cruz. And that's when Lion Ted became a moniker that he's going to have to live with for a very long time. It was a narrative that went south on Ted Cruz. And quite frankly, if we're truthful, Ted Cruz did play a part in that because his campaign was not able to recontrol or get control again of that narrative.
Well, the dirty tricks were there. I mean, in terms of Carson, was he knowledgeable or aware of what his staff was doing?
There's no evidence that he was actually directly knowledgeable of what was going on. The sense is, though, that, and there's actually some reporting this morning that Jeff Rowe, his campaign manager, and a couple other senior advisors saw the CNN report and then went ahead and started to spread the message out to say it looks like Ben Carson indeed is not going to be campaigning after Iowa. Well, that wasn't completely true. It was partly true. He was going back to Florida, but it kind of took on a life of its own. But no, in terms of Ted Cruz knowing, there's no indication that he knew at all. You know, part of the problem, you know, Pat, in politics, it's all about that narrative we talk about. Donald Trump had the narrative, the positive narrative going in. In other words, right at the beginning, when he glided down that escalator, that gold-plated escalator at Trump Tower, he was the $10 billion success guy, the art of the deal, the guy that could turn it around and do big things. And he was, you know, he had all this rich success behind or under his belt. Ted Cruz had no narrative to speak of, and that's the problem. Donald Trump's narrative was already solid, and Ted Cruz's narrative, not so much. Look at Marco Rubio, little Marco. All of a sudden, his narrative got defined. Ben Carson's narrative got defined in a negative way as well by some of his missteps, and I think that was a big part of what's happening here.
One last question. Hillary Clinton has got a lot of trouble, a lot of baggage. Does anybody seriously believe that the Obama administration is going to let the Justice Department go for an indictment?
No, not at all. Loretta Lynch is that attorney general, and absolutely not. There's no indication at all that indeed Hillary Clinton will be prosecuted for any some sort of indictment that may potentially come along. No, I don't think there's any sense at all that that's going to happen. And so Hillary Clinton will go into the general election, and everybody's like, well, wait a minute, Bernie Sanders is winning all of these primaries. Well, the reality is the system is a bit rigged, and it has to do with superdelegates. You know, these superdelegates were put in place during the George McGovern days, you know, when George McGovern was as liberal, and the Democrats wanted no part of any sort of liberal Democrats. So they were going to make sure that the the Democrat establishment had these superdelegates, the ones that could vote for whoever they wanted, so they can, in essence, play kingmaker and put someone that they wanted in there. And indeed, Hillary Clinton has plenty of those superdelegates, so there's no chance that Bernie Sanders is going to get this, despite the fact that he keeps winning and winning and winning. And by the way, let me just say on Donald Trump, because I just thought of one thing here. He actually has just won the GOP version of Celebrity Apprentice. I mean, he has beaten the other 16 contestants. He's the winner. Now can he beat Hillary?
And the others, you're fired. I got you. David, thank you so much. Stay with us, and we want to, it's an ongoing saga. It's not over yet, but thanks to David Brody for covering that. Very, very insightful. Isn't it interesting? What a crazy time. But, you know, I'm sort of relieved. I mean, the Republican Party, if it gets together behind Trump, you know, he's got to get some advisors around him who are knowledgeable. And I think when he was with me, he talked about a vice president who would kind of run the day-to-day things of government. And I believe, you know, he didn't get where he was from just being totally stupid. He's a pretty canny guy. So we'll see what happens. Okay.
Absolutely.